What is up, Flockers? That is my fellow Lockers and aspiring Lockers. In today's video, let's go ahead and talk about the pros and the cons to self-retying versus the pros and cons to having a Loctician do your retightnings for you. We're just gonna go into it. I don't feel like doing a whole bunch of editing today, so we're just going to go through my list. All right, so the first pro that I have for having a Loctician do it and not doing it yourself is that you have someone else doing the work. So you are getting this time back, time that you're not having to spend doing your own hair. You can sit back in a chair and relax. Maybe you can bring your laptop or your phone and get work done while the person is doing your hair. So that is an investment in time that you're able to keep for yourself instead of having to spend on your hair. So that is definitely a huge pro of a reason why you might want to have a Loctician do your retightnings instead of self-retightening. Another pro for having a Loctician do it is that they're able to catch issues that maybe you can't see. All right, so yes, I can feel my hair and feel things, but I can't see my whole head. And I know that they have those three-way mirrors or whatever they're called that you can watch and look and see what you're doing in the back of your head, or you can use a phone to reflect onto your TV to project the image. But it's not the same as having someone else, another set of hands and another set of eyes that are above you and around you to be able to look and see and point out any possible problems that you do have. So having a Loctician and also their experience and knowing if there's some issues going on that they may be able to point out to you that maybe you can't see yourself or you just haven't noticed yourself. The third thing that I find as a pro of having a Loctician do your retightenings for you is that it typically is going to be faster. Although you may be pretty fast yourself, I feel like 9.9 times out of 10, someone else doing a retightening as opposed to you doing it yourself is always going to be faster, just because they're at a different angle. Their arms aren't going to get tired as quickly as yours because they're not having to reach and do weird things like that. Like, they're able to stand in a comfortable position and move around as they're doing your retie. And the fourth pro of having a Loctician doing your retie is that, granted, you would need it to be a professional, but they're going to do a good job. It's going to get done and it's going to look nice. It's going to be crisp. Again, if they're a professional. Hopefully, I know that there are some people out there that have been scammed by people, but for the most part, if you're going to a Loctician, you've done your research, you know, so they're going to be professional. They're going to get the job done and it's going to look nice. So on the flip side, some of the cons of going to a Loctician is maybe, especially in the beginning of you going the first couple of times, or just in general, if you don't have a kind of Loctician relationship with your Loctician, it might feel like a client. They may treat you like a client and not necessarily care about your hair. And again, I'm not saying this is the vast majority, but there are some people out there that are just trying to make their coin and they're not concerned about the health of your hair and about your scalp. And so they're just in it to get their check, like I said, and move on to the next. So having a Loctician, you may not get the special treatment that you want because they might be just treating you as another client, because in essence you are a client. The next thing is that depending on who you get, they may rush. Not everybody is going to be patient and take the time to make sure that they're not snagging your hair or pulling your hair. And they can't feel it, you feel it. So if you're, when you're doing it yourself, if you're pulling too tight, you're pulling it too tight, but the Loctician's not going to know that, especially if you don't communicate these things with them. So that is also a con, is that they may rush, to try to move on and get it done quicker. And they're just not going to know your pain tolerance and stuff like that if you're not communicating that with them. So that can be a con as well. And also the cost associated with having a Loctician. The cost, of course, depending on whether you have Sisterlocks, Microlocs, the size of your locks, how many locks you have, the density of your hair, all that factors in. But I don't know of anyone that charges cheap prices. You need to pay people what they're worth and for the service. So I totally understand why Locticians charge what they're charging. I'm sure there might be some that are charging way too much, but I feel like most people are charging what they're worth. And even those that are charging crazy prices, maybe it's because they are so busy and booked that they can raise their prices up because people are going to pay for them. So it's a balance, but that could be a con because that's money that you could keep in your pocket if you were doing it yourself, as opposed to having someone else do it. And the prices can be expensive. So that 150, 200, 300 that you're paying for a retie every 4, 6 to 8 weeks, that's money that you could be putting in your gas tank, or money that you could be buying extra groceries, or whatever you want to allot that money to, your next vacation that you're going to go on. So you have to balance it. All right, so now self-maintenance, doing your reties yourself. Here's some pros. One of the hugest pros is that you get to decide when you want to do it. You're on your schedule. You don't have to worry about anyone else and trying to match your schedule up with them. You do it when you want to. And if you're not able to do the whole thing in one sitting, you break it up in two. I do mine in 2 sittings. I do it on 2 different days. Half one day, half the other day. If I wanted to break it up into 3 days or a whole week, I could do that because it's on my schedule. So you're able to make the schedule. You're able to do it when you want to or not do it when you want to. And there's no penalty for, saying I'm going to do it on Tuesday and then not doing it, because there's no late fee, no penalty or anything like that. So you get to set the schedule with that. Another pro to self-retying is that you can be as gentle as you want. Like I mentioned, the loctician's not going to know if they're snagging your hair and pulling your hair as much as you are, because you can feel it. And if you're not communicating, I know a lot of people don't necessarily communicate with their hairdressers or locticians as much as they should. And so because you can feel it, you know your own limits, and you can judge, and you can be as gentle as you want to be. You don't have to tighten it super tight. It's better to leave it a little bit loose so that there's room for it not to hurt. You shouldn't be giving yourself a headache when you're doing reties. So that's a plus, that you can be gentle with it. And also you can you can choose your own rotation. There might be some locticians that will allow you to determine if you want to be a 2-point, 3-point, or 4-point rotation. But I know a lot of locticians out the gate are like, depending on your hair density, your hair type, your curl pattern, all that, they're going to decide what rotation is best for you for the longevity of your locks. And with their experience, the majority of them probably know exactly what is the best rotation. But you, like I said, if you're doing it yourself, a pro is that you can choose. If you want to be a 2-point rotation and have a thicker, fluffier look, then you can. If you want to have a more condensed look, you can go for a 4. If you want something in between, you can go for a 3. So you get to make that decision for yourself ultimately. And you could switch it up if you want to. Not that I recommend it, but maybe you started out with the 4 and you're like, this is too condensed. And so a year later, you're like, I want to loosen it up a little bit and go to a 3 or a 2. You can make those decisions for yourself. Another pro is that you know your hair and you can sense problems. Now, I know I said that if a loctician is standing over you, they can see stuff, which is true, but locticians may not always point out stuff to you because maybe they're like, ooh, I don't want them to stop coming to me, or I don't want them to think that I caused this issue. So they might not always be forthcoming, and you would hope that you would have a good enough relationship that your loctician is going to be honest with you and tell you, even if it is a mistake that they made. But when you're doing it yourself, you know your hair, you know if you feel a spot that's thinning or feeling like something's not right, or you're putting a hole or double knotting or anything like that. So you're able to kind of fill it out as you're doing it. You know your hair, you know your locks, you've been growing this hair for however long. And so that's just the pro of being able to know your own hair, your own scalp, your own pain threshold, and your own tolerance, if you're tenderheaded and things like that. So that's a huge pro to me. Now onto the cons of doing your retightenings yourself is that if you're not experienced, if you haven't done your research, if you don't know what you're doing, you could cause holes. And that could be a huge issue. Like I said, you need to do your research. You need to know what you're doing and make sure you're doing it correctly, because you don't want to cause holes and cause damage to your hair in the long run. Another con is that you could miss issues. You could miss them because you can't see things. And so maybe you're feeling, but you're not seeing something, or maybe you're not examining your locks as you're running your hands through them and stuff like that. Maybe you're just rushing yourself and trying to get it done as quickly as possible, so you're not paying attention and trying to catch things. So that could be a huge con. And then there's also the con of maybe you get lazy and you don't want to keep up with any type of schedule, and you allow your new growth to grow out too long, and you wait too long to do your retie, which could cause damage because especially in the beginning. As you get further into your lock journey and your years in, you can extend your retie periods. But in the beginning, you do kind of need to stick to a schedule, because if you don't, like I said, your new growth can get super long, which if it's not done in a certain amount of time, and with the marrying and having to pop your locks at the roots and stuff, it can cause thinning, it can cause breakage and damage and stuff like that. So there are ways that you can damage your hair if you're doing it yourself and you're not staying on top of it and doing it properly. So just like with anything in life, there are pros and there are cons to everything. At the end of the day, you have to decide what's right for you, what's right for your pocketbook, what's right for your lifestyle. And then don't let anybody shame you or make you feel bad about what you decide, because at the end of the day, it's your hair, your life, your decisions. If you found this video helpful, make sure to hit that like button and also hit the subscribe button so that you can join the flock. And before you go anywhere, check out some of the other videos that have popped up on the screen. I'll see you there.